to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 34, verse 10. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. David and Solomon. We endowed David with blessings from us. O mountains, submit with him, and you too, O birds. We soften the iron for him. You may make shields that fit perfectly and work righteousness. Whatever you do, I'm seer thereof. The first oil field. To Solomon we committed the wind at his disposal, traveling 1 month coming and 1 month going, and we caused a spring of oil to gush out for him. Also the jinns worked for him by his Lord's leave. Any one of them who disregarded our commands, we subjected him to a severe retribution. They made for him anything he wanted: niches, statues, deep pools, and heavy cooking pots. O family of David, work righteousness to show appreciation. Only a few of my servants are appreciative. SubhanAllah. So these verses are referring to Solomon and David as prophets of God, and how God endowed them with so many blessings. God gave them, lots of things that no other messenger or prophet had received in the past. For example, God allowed the mountains to submit with him and glorify him, and the birds. And then God softened the iron for him, and he was able to make all kinds of materials from the iron, like shields, cooking pots, all kinds of things. And then also for Solomon, God says he who was the son of David, God committed the wind. He could direct the wind wherever he wanted, which means like, they could cause rain anywhere he wanted. He had the first oil field, in the world, which, made him obviously the wealthiest. And then also God allowed the jinns to work for him. And we know, how tremendous that would be for someone to be able to have that type of power. Imagine you can have the richest countries in the world, have the most cutting edge technology to be able to, go and, let's say, invade a country, or, to be able to go ahead and do anything like spying or anything like that, to another country or things like that. But he had these invisible giants, which is the jinns in this case, working for him. They could go, faster than the speed of light, or at the speed of light, and travel so many places and gather so much information for him, or bring things. We know, for example, he was able to his jinns were able to transport things as large as like mansions within a blink of an eye. So imagine having these types of capabilities. The birds were committed at his disposal, giving him information from all places. So no one in the world could compete with anything remotely close. And God gave them all these blessings, right? And so the idea was that this was also part of his admissions test, the extreme end of the spectrum, right? To see what would you do, how he would react, or anyone would react, when they are given an abundance in blessings as much as Solomon and David. And Solomon obviously was even richer than David, being his son, because he even had more resources than his father, who came into the power, after killing Goliath himself, right? And so all of these blessings that God gave to them, God allowed them to have these blessings while testing them. So it's not just that God gives people blessings, he gives them blessings to see how they respond to those blessings. A lot of people, when they receive some amount of blessings from God, it can really, really sometimes, if they have egos and they're not able to, comprehend what is really going on, and the fact that it is from God, and the fact that they're being tested, the fact that it is nothing great of them that they have all this money or wealth. People who don't have that mindset can easily, let it get to their heads, and can easily become extremely arrogant and self-conceited and egotistical, knowing that they have attained all these things because of their own smartness, because of their own cleverness, because of something great of them, right? And this is where you idolize your wealth and your money and your ego at the same time, And this person who we know from the Quran, who had some small amount of property, and he said that he attained it because of his own cleverness. So that person had clearly failed his test at that point. But we see in this case that God says that, they were told, family of David, work righteousness to show our appreciation. Only a few of my servants are appreciative. So there's very, very few people that are appreciative, right? And when it says only a few of my servants are appreciative, that's actually true. I mean, you think about how many people in the world have blessings like that from God. I mean, they're not going to have the same amount of blessings, but imagine the amount of people that are, according to today's standards, considered rich, and how many blessings they would have. Like even us, we have so many blessings, and we have to be appreciative. And so people who are rich and who have blessings, most of them are not appreciative. Most of them don't even believe in God. Most of them, credit it to themselves, saying that, yes, I was working hard. I was at the, some people will say, I was at the right place at the right time, or whatever, Or some people will say, oh, anybody can get these things. You just have to do this, and don't do this and do that, and you're going to be rich, and etc. And so they think that they attain all of these things on their own, and they're capable of achieving all these goals if they just set their eyes on them and they start working on them. But that's not true. You can set your eyes on something and start working towards it, but if God doesn't want that thing to happen, that thing will never happen, right? God will only give someone something if He decides to give it, if He knows that that's what He wants, if it's in accordance with His will. And someone just getting wealth and blessings in terms of the worldly material wealth doesn't necessarily mean that they are so great and just God is blessing them. There are people, for example, in submission, who get money and then they become arrogant, thinking that Satan obviously has his own way of trapping everybody, right? So he traps these people by telling them that they have attained all of these things, even though they might be just going to the admissions test, but they feel that they have attained all these things because they're so righteous, because if they were not, God would not give it to them, because God says that, when He gives people wealth, they transgress. And so they don't think about the fact that they might still have it, and they might still be doing the exact same thing that other people are doing, and that is transgressing, But they would say that, God has given them these things because obviously they can handle it, and that's why God has given it to them, and that they start thinking they're righteous and better than other people, I mean, this is something that I have personally witnessed. But the truth is, based on how I understand it, but the truth is that, you could be tested in your admissions test by a lot of wealth, and people are easily failing it because they get preoccupied with their money, preoccupied with their children, and Satan makes them believe that they're doing good. He makes them believe they're being guided. They're not spending money in the cause of God as much as they should be. They're not giving to charity as much as they should be. So they're clearly not focused on God, But by some of them maybe following their minimum requirements, may feel like they're doing good, right? But the thing is, these people, some of these people can become so preoccupied with their wealth and their money that God is just not really a priority that they think about, right? When you have so many things going on, it becomes hard, right? It becomes hard to focus sometimes. But a submitter, obviously, God will make it so. Given the case of Solomon, someone who was a ruler of a huge kingdom with vast resources, that no one can ever attain in this world, right? I mean, for example, no one can have jinns working for them, and so by the standards, by modern standards, I was watching this documentary and they were saying that, he was the richest man in history, Solomon, on earth. Like if you compare, for example, having his own oil field and stuff like that, right? And so there are people who may have a little bit of wealth, like imagine having oil resources and stuff, and their families' worths are not in today's currency in the billions, right? And so imagine in Solomon's time, it would be a lot of money, right? And then owning these lands, owning these countries, like people still don't own countries and lands, and he practically, being a king, owned all of these things, right? I mean, there was no government other than himself that was taking anything, right? He was not like some president who was employed by some local standards, anyways. So we get the idea, right? I mean, he was pretty much the most richest person that ever lived on this planet. I mean, thinking about nothing great of him, but I mean, great that God is the one who provided all these things, and he tested him as part of his admissions test with all of these resources. So that, when you think about that, then we're glorifying God. We're not glorifying Solomon or saying there's nothing great of him, but we're talking about the fact that you could be tested with so much wealth, right? But doesn't mean that you're so great and so honorable or so righteous. It could just be a test, to see how you do, right? But nevertheless, these people passed their tests. Solomon was extremely obedient of God and very appreciative. And we see the example, right? We see the example of Solomon later on with the ant, and the ant, when he is able to understand the ant, he smiles and says, God thinks that God wants to test him to see whether he's appreciative or not, right? And he's thanking God for it, right? And so imagine like us going through something like that, we'd be like, oh wow, like how I'm so smart, I have this ability. Oh, I wonder if it's because of my genetic combination or whatever, or because I was taking so much interest and learned so much of such and such, right? I mean, people, that's how the mindset is, right? But our mindset should be like, the moment we acknowledge a blessing in front of us from God, we should thank God for it, right? And so that would become difficult when you have so many blessings. And then in the same way, in contrast, when you have lack of it, it becomes difficult to keep being appreciative and keep being able to count your blessings. So these are all tests that we go through, and Solomon was definitely put to that test at the most extreme level, and he passed it, So God willing, I'll continue reading. Verse 14 says, Jin's knowledge is limited. When the appointed time for his death came, they had no clue that he had died. It was not until one of the animals tried to eat his staff that, and he fell down, that the jinns realized that he was dead. They thus realized that if they really knew the unseen, they would have stopped working for so hard as soon as he died. So, so the subtitle says, Jin's knowledge is limited. And this is important for a reason, that many people think that jinns have so much knowledge. So the fact that jinns can travel so fast, and they live longer, they have information, and the other jinns live longer, that are with them, you know, they could have even, let's say, a jinn as much as maybe like 100 years old, can go and in the blink of an eye go to another continent and get information and come back within less than a minute, give you information, right? Many people, and they could go ask someone who's 200 years old and tell you what happened 200 years ago, right? And give you names of people and everything, right? And so this may, and if those jinns are communicating with humans, humans have the tendency to believe anything the jinn says, right? So now many of these jinns are not righteous, right? And so they're devils, some of them, right? Or most of them. So they can come and tell people other things in the future that they feel, and they do, you know, they give some of this information from the past, and then they trap the humans by trying to give them information about the future, you know, based on guessing and stuff, right? And based on trying to get information, and you know, God has created them differently, but they tend to, make people believe that they know the future, you know, by giving them this information. God is telling us that they don't, and this is a perfect example that they had no idea when Solomon died, and they thought he was alive, and they were still working for him, thinking that, you know, they were accountable and he would punish them basically if they weren't working. Until one of the animals, we don't know what kind of animal it was, but some animal that tried to eat his staff, and he fell down. So they didn't even know that he was dying, or the fact that he had already been dead. And so that's when they found out, when they saw him dying, right? So anyways, we know that only God knows the future, and if someone tries to tell you the future, don't believe them, because that obviously would also account to idol worship. Like if you feel that someone has the power to tell you the future, and many people go to these so-called fortune tellers to tell them what's going to happen and what they're going to do, and just take people's money. God willing, I'll continue reading verse 15. Sheba's homeland used to be a marvel, with 2 gardens on the right and left. Eat from your Lord's provisions and be appreciative of him. Good land and a forgiving Lord. They turned away, and consequently we poured upon them a disastrous flood, and we substituted their 2 gardens into gardens of bad-tasting fruits, thorny plants, and a skimpy harvest. We thus requited them for their disbelief. Do we not requite only the disbelievers? We placed between them and the communities that we blessed other oases, and we secured the journey between them, traveled there in days and nights in complete security. But they turned unappreciative and said, and challenged, Our Lord, we do not care if you increase the distance of our journeys without any stations. They thus wronged their own souls. Consequently, we made them history and scattered them into small communities throughout the land. This should provide lessons for those who are steadfast, appreciative. Satan claims a majority. Satan found them readily fulfilling his expectations. They followed him except a few believers. The objective, do we believe in the hereafter? He never had any power over them, but we thus distinguish those who believe in the hereafter from those who are doubtful about it. Your Lord is in full control of all things. And 34:21 says, footnote, the criteria that informs us whether we believe in the hereafter or not are in 6:113, 17:45, 17:45, and 39:45, right? So if you go to 6:113 and see what it says, I think that would be good. So maybe I will see if I can read those verses as well. So 6:113 says, important criterion. This is to let the minds of those who do not believe in the hereafter listen to such fabrication and accept them, and thus expose their true convictions, right? And there's obviously other verses. Now, so the idea is that if someone truly believed in the hereafter, that they would not listen to fabrications. They would ultimately believe in Quran being the only source of guidance, and that all the falsehood being not from God, understanding that these are all fabrications. And so 6, 113 to 115, it says, upholding any other source besides the Quran reflects disbelief in the Quran. And I guess we can also read 1745 and 3945. So 1745 says, disbelievers cannot understand the Quran. When you read the Quran, we place between you and those who do not believe in the hereafter an invisible barrier. Quran, the only source, we place shields around their minds to prevent them from understanding it, and deafness in their ears. And when you preach your Lord using the Quran alone, they run away in aversion. Right? And then the third verse here that's mentioned is 39:45. So 39:45 says, the greatest criterion. When God alone is mentioned, the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter shrink with aversion. But when others are mentioned beside him, they become satisfied. Okay, so this informs us that whether or not we believe in the hereafter, so people who believe in the hereafter will listen to fabrications, will follow idols, and follow other sources besides Quran, right? But the people who truly believe in the hereafter will not fall for these things. So God knows about us. God knows about what we believe, how we believe, and the way God has designed this system is that if you truly believe, you will not fall for these things. So it's like a little litmus test which is able to expose those people, right? Of course, our inner thoughts cannot be exposed the way our actions can be. We can be exposed to our actions, right? Because you physically witness something. You cannot hold someone, accountable in court, for example, if you just say, well, he was thinking this and he was thinking that. But if they do certain actions, you can prove that that's what he was thinking. And that's exactly the idea on sending us into this world by allowing these things to be around us to be used as a trap for those people who do not believe in the hereafter. So the belief in the hereafter is so critical, more than a lot of people will realize. And then Sheba's homeland, verse 15 talking about Sheba's homeland. Now, Sheba's homeland was, filled with God's blessings, and we know that the people were not appreciative. They were given so many blessings, and they were, still allowed to be, unappreciative and ungrateful of the blessings that God had given them. And then this queen, if we look at the history and stuff, and this is also mentioned in the Bible, etc., and so based on, history, this was someone who existed in, ancient Saudi Arabian kingdom of Sabah, right? Although in some traditions, like they say, this was in Africa, but Sabah is basically in the Arabian Peninsula. So this it's something around 1200 BC apparently. These people did not care of God's blessings, and so God took them away from him. So what do we see from this? That it's important for us to appreciate things, that we have. When people become unappreciative, they lose those blessings. So God wants us to be appreciative. God wants us to be thankful to Him, to acknowledge these blessings. These are given to us so we can be thankful. That's the entire task, right? To be thankful for those blessings that you have. Whenever you have blessings, remember to thank God for them. Try to recognize the blessings first. Many people don't recognize. For example, do you thank God for, being, in a place where, let's say indoors, when you have air conditioner or when you have heating to the point where you cannot constantly go through the extreme temperatures, like when you go outside and it's super hot, or you go outside and it's super cold, but when you come inside the house, things are good, but you don't thank God when you're back. You just, maybe you think about it, oh, it's cool here, or oh, it's warm here, and then you just stop thinking about it, right? And you just get distracted by something else, and you may start complaining about something else, right? But the idea is, obviously, it's not about like one time or twice you may forget, but it's about constantly, like, do you appreciate things in life? Sometimes people are given so many nice things in life, and they're just so unappreciative. And the people who are unappreciative, they're normally miserable, unhappy, obviously, because they're not with God. Because if you're with God, you would be thankful, you'd be happy for the blessings you have, right? You'd acknowledge them, and even if you'd have little, you'd still be happy, right? And God says, the more you thank me, the more I give you. So it's really in your favor to thank God. If you want blessings from God, be appreciative. And so we have to remind ourselves that we have to be appreciative. And Satan claims the majority of people this way, right? As the verse says, Satan claims the majority. He readily finds them fulfilling his expectations. And so also the other aspect of it is that the appreciativeness doesn't necessarily mean that you just say, oh, thank God for this and thank God for that. Obviously that's very important too. But thanking God, not just with our lips, but with our actions. We do the righteous deeds, that we do the commemoration, we do the prayers, we give to charity, we do all these things to show our appreciation towards God, right? If you just say with your words your appreciation and you don't show it with your actions, it really shows that you're just basically offering lip service. So God will continue reading verse 22. Says, implore the idols you have set up beside God. They do not possess as much as a single atom in the heavens or the earth. They possess no partnership therein, nor does he permit them to be his assistants. No intercession. Intercession with him will be in vain unless it coincides with his will. When their minds are finally settled down and they ask, what did your Lord say? They will say the truth. He's the Most High, the Most Great. Say, who provides for you from the heavens and the earth? Say, God. And say, either we or you are guided or have gone far astray. Say, you're not responsible for our crimes, nor are we responsible for what you do. Say, our Lord will gather us all together before him. He will judge between us equitably. He is the judge, the omniscient. Say, show me the idols you have set up as partners with him. Say, no, he is the one God, the Almighty, most wise. So the Quran is talking about, people who commit idol worship, and how it doesn't, it is something that is very ridiculous and something that does not mean anything, right? For people to commit idol worship, they're just doing something that doesn't make sense, and something that's going to hurt them, something that will prohibit paradise for them for eternity, and something that will doom them to hell forever, right? Because they fail to do the one thing that they're sent to this world for, which is to worship God alone. So if someone fails to worship God alone, they're basically guaranteed hell if they continue it till death. And then God is telling us that, only God is the one who provides for us from the heavens and the earth. And so we should tell them that God is the only one who provides, and either we're astray or you're far astray. Obviously, because there's a big difference in what a monotheist submitter is saying, and compared to someone, let's say, who worships another entity besides God, a human being, a dead human being like Muhammad or Jesus or some saints or some imaginary gods for that matter. And so all these idols, say, show me the idols you have set up as partners with him. Say, no, he's the one God, the Almighty, most wise. And this reminds me, last night, I went to an Indian grocery store, and I see the idols for sale, and there was like, literally, the word that was used was idols, so like, some god idols, right? It doesn't say God, it says, I think it was the elephant god of the Hindus who worship this elephant-like god with a huge trunk. I think it's called Shiva or something. There's a Shiva idols for sale, and then they had a small one for $9.99, and medium one for like $19.99, and the large one was for $29.99. Right? And literally, I wanted to take a picture. Actually, I forgot about it. But people are so hypnotized by Satan that they don't realize that these are the idols they make with their own hands. They don't have to be statues, but in this case, they are statues, actually literal statues that they make with their own hands. They paint them, they draw these weird characteristics on them, and then they go put them in their homes, and then they worship them, right? And they don't think for a second that these are just idols they have fabricated. Similarly, people who put names of Muhammad or symbols of Jesus in their homes, thinking that they will protect them, from anything, obviously, are also committed in idol worship, and who end up commemorating them instead of God, are falling for Satan's traps. Verse 28, God's messenger of the covenant. We have sent you, or Rashad, to all people, a bearer of good news, as well as a warner, but most people do not know. They challenge, when will that promise come to pass? Say, you have a specific time and a specific day that you cannot delay by 1 hour nor advance it. And advance. Those who disbelieve have said, we will not believe in this Quran nor in the previous scriptures. If you could envision those transgressors when they stand before their Lord, they will argue with one another back and forth. The followers will tell their leaders, if it were not for you, we would have been believers on the day of resurrection. The leaders will say to those who followed them, are we the ones who diverted you from the guidance after it came to you? No, it was you who were wicked. The followers will say to their leaders, it was you who schemed night and day, then commanded us to be unappreciative of God and to set up idols to rank with him. They will be ridden with remorse when they see the retribution, for we will place shackles around the necks of those who disbelieved. Are they not justly requited for what they did? Every time, subtitle says, every time we send a warner to a community, the leaders of that community said, we reject the message you are sent with. So we see from these verses, there is actually a footnote for 34:28. It says, as detailed in Appendix 2, the name of this messenger is mathematically coded into the Quran as Rashad Khalifa. By adding the numerical value of the name Rashad, 505, plus the numerical value of the name Khalifa, 725, plus the number of the surah, 34, plus the number of the verse, 28, we obtain a total that conforms to the Quran's 19-based mathematical miracle, which was unveiled through Rashad Khalifa. 405 plus 725 plus 34 plus 28 equals 1292, or 19 times 68. More information is given in 519 in its footnote, right? And if you like to read 519, we can do that now. And 519 says, 519, God's messenger of the covenant. The footnote, it says, this verse reports the fulfillment of the biblical and Quranic prophecy regarding the advent of God's messenger of the covenant, Malachi 3:1, Quran 3:81. The name of this messenger is mathematically coded into the Quran as Rashad Khalifa. This very special verse warrants the presentation of specific evidence. By adding the geometrical value of Rashad plus the value of Khalifa plus the surah number plus the verse number, we obtain a total of 1254, or 19 times 66. 19 is the Quran's common denominator, which was revealed through Rashad Khalifa. More evidence and specific details are mentioned in Appendix 2. Now, if you want more details, you can read about it in Appendix 2 regarding the Messenger of the Covenant, and more details about the mathematical miracle in Appendix 1 of the Final Testament written by Dr. Rashad Khalifa. And so these verses remind us that every time a messenger went to the people, every time a messenger went to the people, they disbelieved, right? And this is true for the Messenger of the Covenant. As we know, this is referring to Dr. Rashad Khalifa. And some people would wonder, like, why is it written in parentheses that Rashad Khalifa? Why doesn't it say Rashad's name? Well, the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago, right? And God had to tell us that this messenger was coming, but he mathematically coded it, right? So, and we can decode it based on the numbers, the geometrical values. Now, imagine if the name was written, Rashad Khalifa. Now, by the time that we're in now, there would be like 100,000 people who would have claimed to be Rashad Khalifa. That's how people are, right? Satan's false messengers would love to do that, right? But basically, God wanted it to be the actual person to come and give them with the proof, right? And so the name was mathematically coded and hidden, for that matter, specifically, among other things. And so, but the idea is like, with all these incredible proofs as we have, as you can read in this verse, and then Appendix 2, Appendix 1, and other appendices as well, there's so much evidence, so much concrete proof, physical, tangible, that anybody can verify. You don't have to be a scientist to understand these things. But people still will not believe. And these people, we see what will happen to these people, right? They have leaders, right? So you see these leaders going up on YouTube and stuff now, right? Saying bad things about the Messenger of the Covenant, saying, oh yeah, he lied, he was this, he was that. And then they have millions of followers. So what will happen is that these people become curious. They want to know what their leader says, and their leader says all these nasty things, and then these people follow them, right? And so imagine on the Day of Judgment, all of these people will be fighting with each other, cursing each other, blaming each other, and just being simply remorseful for the rest of eternity. And it's something really hard to put our minds around, but something that could benefit them tremendously in this world and in the hereafter. It would save them from eternal retribution. They did not take heed, and eventually ended up at loss in this manner, and basically destroyed their souls and destroyed their hereafter, simply because their egos did not want them to accept that there was another messenger that God had sent, that God did not choose them to be a messenger, but chose someone else to be a messenger, and that God sent a messenger after some idols that they may have that also prevented them from accepting the messenger. And this is a tragic human trait, and this is a tragedy for humanity, because most of the humans are going to be in hell as a result of that, right? Because obviously because of what they committed, and obviously because of their own disbelief. Most people have the natural instinct to worship God alone. All people have the natural instinct to worship God alone, but most people end up disregarding their natural instinct and falling for these idols, falling for Satan's traps, and because of that, most people are condemned to hell. And so there's minority of the minority, the people who are very fortunate, the people who are saved. These are the people who are appreciative, right? And so when God sends a messenger, you could be appreciative, right? Imagine having no guidance, having so much confusion, having people trying to steer you left and right in whatever way they want, trying to make money off of you, trying to confuse you, saying nonsense that doesn't make sense, and you're following all this stuff, and then God sends a messenger, especially to guide you, to help you. You should be appreciative, right? But people, want to look for flaws. People want to look for excuse not to follow them. They look for excuses to not follow the messengers of God, to look for excuses to complain, and as a result, they're deprived, in this manner, and they are going to lose their souls on the day of judgment. So may God allow us to not be like that, and to be one of those who truly from their hearts follow and accept the truth, accept the reality of the hereafter, and someone who is appreciative and thankful to God all the time, and thankful to God for all His blessings, including the message that God has given us, and we do it justice to ourselves and to the message that God has given us. So with this, I will end, and if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you.
Inshallah.
Yes, with Surah 34, verse 21, the objective, do we really believe in the hereafter? In the footnote, you read the verses, mashallah, like 113, for example, it's like these fabrications and stuff are allowed. And that's something I kind of wondered or was curious about before submission, or like when I was growing up in Christianity. There's a lot of like misinformation and crazy stuff out there. And you're like, why is this even allowed? Like, why doesn't God, and you have these thoughts, but you realize it kind of has to be that way, because it's like if you have a thief in the room, in order for him to be exposed, I mean, you set a cookie jar and see who goes after the cookies. So it's like with these people, if Satan pushes, the fabrications, like with the Mohammedans, or more of what I've understood and been through, like with the Christianity as it's practiced today, it's, there'll be a fabrication, the cookie jar, like, oh, there's a get out of hell free card. This prophet had died for you, and you can go to heaven. And you kind of do whatever you want in this world and just repent. Jesus saved you. And people who are not righteous, or like they hate the idea of accountability deep in their hearts, whether they say they do or not, they're going to love hearing that. And so they're naturally, like the 113 says, they're going to readily accept that stuff. And it just exposes, what's in their hearts. Because if you don't know, no, you have to, there's a system, there's a reckoning, God alone. They're not going to be so averse to that. They're going to rather take the easy way, with no pain, like with no pain is gain, and they don't want to strive, and it's just, it's more comfortable for them to just believe Muhammad will intercede or Jesus will intercede. So, and these same people will tell you they really do believe in the hereafter, but as it was well discussed just earlier, they do not. It's really just lip service for these people. But, Yeah, good point on verse 28, brother. You know, about how people, you know, Rashad Khalifa, how he was coded into the Quran, because yeah, there would have been, you know, all type of people that like, oh, I'm Rashad Khalifa, I'm Rashad Khalifa, or they'll probably even try to change their name and stuff, you know,
Yeah,
to trick people, you know. But that's that they still don't have any proof, like the fact that it's mathematically coded to is there can only be, you know, the one Rashad Khalifa, which he's subhanAllah, God's system is the best, you know. Thank God.
anybody else has any comments, or anyone has any comments or questions? So I do see we have another brother who has joined us probably for the first time. Brother Sipon City says, brother, would you like to introduce yourself? Masha, welcome to the study. So we have another new participant, Huda. Would you like to introduce yourself? Just kidding. Okay. Yeah. So if there are comments or questions, you know, normally what we do is we go through the verses for the first 40 minutes or so. We talk about you know, the verses. If we have any questions about these verses, we ask them, and or comments, you know. And then after that, once we are done discussing, if we have any off-topic questions, like, you know, questions that are not related directly to the verses we read, then we go over those topics as well. Um, so just to give you an idea of how the format of the study is.
Yeah, verse 22 about the idols, you know, become floor. Yeah, just remind what you said about the elephant. You know, like,
Yeah, I didn't
really,
show
because
you.
if you really think it's like, you know, walk up to the elephant and show these people and start talking to it and ask it for something, and it's not going to do anything. You know, but the Quran says these people don't possess any intelligence or realization with this. You know, they're just kind of doing it maybe because their parents told them to, but I don't know why or their belief system too well. But
Yeah, I mean, if I show you Shiva idol, well, this is a different one actually, but
Yeah, Shiva, Shiva. I've heard of that one too.
Yeah, but this was that different one. Then you have the elephant one.
Uh-huh.
This is this is what elephant. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if you're in there next time, you could do what Abraham did and break their idols.
If I
I'm
might
just,
make a point.
they probably kick you out.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
think
just
the
kidding.
elephant one. Yeah, it's called Ganesha. This they call it.
Ganesh, okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, I don't know if you guys can see the image that I'm seeing. Yeah, you can see probably on YouTube and stuff. Um,
Yeah,
but
probably
yeah,
on YouTube.
that's like the big trunk, and it's like Dumbo, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In Disney. Okay. Yeah, imagine like if he really had any power, like he could change his looks and stuff, you know, be more like
Yeah, exactly.
less ridiculous looking. So, but yeah, this is God's system He has put in place to expose people's innermost thoughts, to show how they can fall for these things. You know, it's like a easy trap for people to listen to these fabrications and follow them. You know, also shows us freedom of religion. You know that God has in place for people. You know, I mean, he if He wanted, I mean, He could force people to become believers.
Yeah, yeah, it's a perfect system too. Because it's like the message you gave. Do you want about the robot example? Like, do you want to force somebody to like if they're working for you or something, like you don't want to have to force him to like, well, no, they're gonna want to do this for me, or and it's you know it's a good system. So yeah, it's really for 32 and 30, verse 30. I mean, sorry, verse 32 and 33. You can see what the what the leaders are going to say to the followers, and how they're going to respond. I mean, they're all going to say this for the people that don't make it. And even for the people that like reminders have come to them. They only get so many reminders, and according to God's will, whether it's me or it's you or it's anybody that's trying to help this person. But if they, I mean, that they're going to say, "We the ones who diverted you from guidance after it came to you. No, it is you who are wicked." So the followers are going to blame their leaders, and um, it was you who schemed night and day that commanded us to be unappreciative of God and to set up idols to rank with Him. They will be written with remorse when they see the retribution, for we will place shackles around the necks of those who disbelieved. Are they not justly requited for what they did? So like the Quran says, you can give somebody like all the good reminders, but if God does not want to guide them, then they won't. There's nothing you can do. But I mean, God willing, we can hope. As submitters, and then if we're related to these people or not related, we can hope that they can pray for their guidance and stuff. But at the end of the day, God knows these people way better than we do, or I would. So, you know, as long as we do our part, right, brother?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So we also touched on like the admissions test and how people can be tested with these blessings. And anyone has any comments about that? I know Brother Abdullah had some thoughts on it also. Last time. Difficult tests. Yep. Yeah, may God help us. Okay, so are there any more comments, any questions, any off-topic questions from anyone? Any final thoughts before we conclude the study? Okay, so it seems like there's no other comments from anybody, and I don't think I have any other comments either. So, God willing, I mean, any comments on intercession? Also, seems like such a common thing that we see every single day.
Yeah, speaking of that, I was just like the other day, some person from back home, they and I've sent them links to, I think, the miracle a while back, but this person, she sent me these silly little reels about like, oh, this person died, went to hell and saw Jesus, and then she sent like that 3 days ago. And then I'm like, man, why are you like, where I mean, you've been on for like 2 years, bro. I don't believe in any of that. And so then I sent her a really well written, cordial, good message about why that isn't the case, and about Jesus, and quotes that Jesus said. And then I sent her a link to the submission mathematical appendix miracle, and even a few screenshots with a link to the Quran. And she saw, but she didn't respond. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of hoping this will, like, no, I mean, I'm hoping, she's got it, but like this, sometimes, people can get enraged, like if they, how it says, like, you invite them in and they get enraged, and really, yeah, I mean, I don't think people care, because there's no response from them, or like a week later they'll send you the same thing, and I'm like, okay, do I have to tell you like point bluntly, like what else do I say?
Yeah, I mean, in the traditional Muslim world, the people, what they do is every time, they have the call to the prayers, the azan all the time. I think our internet quality is dropping a little bit here, but I hope you guys can hear me well.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
So, so I mean, like every time there's a call to prayer, first of all masjids will have call to prayers, right, everywhere. And then also they read this supplication that they tell people where they, implore for Muhammad's intercession. So if it's on TV, like they'll actually play, recite that supplication where they're imploring Muhammad as their intercessor, or if individually they are there, like they will recite it. They'll make it a habit. So Satan tricks them into imploring for Muhammad's intercession as much as like 5 times a day. Committing idol worship in this manner, on top of all other kinds of idol worship that they commit, right? And then not only they have for Muhammad, I think I discussed this previously, they have it for other people too. Like, if you're you lead the prayer for people in a mosque, like on a frequent basis, it's your job. Or if you have memorized the Quran, for example, you can intercede. There's like they have like a head count of like a quota that they qualify for. Like if they say if you memorize the Quran, someone who memorizes the Quran can take, I don't know, 5 or 10 people from with him to paradise. And
That's funny, you
yeah.
say that because it's like the same thing, and these people, it's like really tricky because you're like, oh, they're so righteous, so many verses from the Quran,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I've seen like you have pastors and preachers, man, dude, they
Mm-hmm.
could quote this, and this from the book of
Mm-hmm.
John and
Mm-hmm.
this, and they don't really like going to the Old Testament too much because that actually tells them,
Mm-hmm.
you're accountable for your works, etc. That's why
Mm-hmm.
like the New Testament, but still, it's like a lot of people are so impressed with their ability to just, oh, look, he can recall this, and but that's just, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like whether people are gonna be impressed by these vain worldly utterances, or they're gonna actually stand devoted to God and not be
Mm-hmm.
tricked, or
Yeah.
like impressed, just by fancy
Mm-hmm.
words and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
oh look, they can.
Yeah. So like, what's common with a lot of families, like at least in Pakistan, it's like they'll have kids and then they'll have like 1 or 2 kids. They will dedicate to sending them to the mosque so they can memorize the Quran, and then if they're smugglers or whatever they're doing, killers or whatever, then they feel satisfied that they're gonna be guaranteed hell, that their son will take them to heaven.
Oh, like he's gonna save him, or she's gonna
Yeah,
save him
yeah.
from.
It's like planning, for hereafter. Let's have
Yeah.
one child just memorize the Quran, and then we can do whatever we want.
Yeah. Well, like, what type of hereafter of paradise do they even expect to go to? Like, if that in their head, if that were true, I mean, it's
Yeah,
like I can't even. In fact, I can't even wrap my head around
yeah,
like understanding that logic because it's
yeah. But
so crazy.
they're falling for their own trap. I mean, disbelief, basically.
Yeah, I can
But they
imagine
think
like
that they
if
believe.
you didn't have like children that couldn't do that, like I
Hmm.
guess everybody else is just done for,
Yeah,
or they don't know.
yeah. That's another reason to have children.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and,
like it said, intercession is Satan's most effective bait. You
hmm
get so many people.
Yeah, and so like obviously, for those people, like God has given clear examples of Muhammad. He couldn't save his uncle. I mean, he wanted to save him, he
Exactly.
couldn't save him. So, like, if he can just take people with him, whoever he wants, to paradise, then why would he go through the pains of like trying to make them believers in the first place, right? I mean, he could just take anybody. He just tell God, let this person go in, and. But the thing is, Noah couldn't save his family, and Muhammad couldn't save his family. Lot couldn't save his family. So why do people think that these people who they don't even know will come and save them? Like,
Yeah,
and
total
the
stranger.
hereafter will be just interesting, to see these people's faces that were thinking that Jesus, when Jesus was like, "Who are you? I don't even know
Yeah.
you. Get away from me." You
Well,
know.
they all think they know what that means. Like, and it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because it's they all point the finger at each other. Oh no, the Baptists are
Mm-hmm.
wrong. The Jehovah's
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses, the
Yeah.
First Day, or the Latter Day
Mm-hmm.
Saints, the Apostolic Reformation. Like, they're even
Mm-hmm.
coming up with these new sects
Yeah.
I've been hearing about, and
Mm-hmm.
they all like are jealous of each other. You
Mm-hmm.
can see it, like they're jealous of
Mm-hmm.
of different
Mm-hmm.
sections, and
Mm-hmm.
they're the very things that they're
Mm-hmm.
guilty of, and like
Yeah.
the just big ego hype and getting up
Mm-hmm.
there, and it's not about God, it's about them, and
Mm-hmm.
the popularity and stuff. They all
Mm-hmm.
accuse everyone else of doing that, and you see this, and then you have the verse. I don't remember exactly the square number, but it says we committed the people of the scripture with animosity and hatred to each other until the day of resurrection because of the consequence of violating their covenant. And this is so true. It's exactly what you see with these people. They argue amongst themselves, and it's just, imagine it. Like you said, they're gonna wake up like with a horror-eyed face, like when Jesus. They all think Jesus is gonna save them, or so it's gonna, yeah, it's gonna be, it's gonna be something to see for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, for some reason your speech gets cut off in certain places, it gets accelerated in other places, so it becomes a little distorted. I don't know.
Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi goes from 2 to 3 bars
I
every now
think
and then.
yes, Wi-Fi probably needs restarting or something. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So if there are any other comments from anyone, if not, we can conclude today's study. So thank you all for participating and joining the study. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you guys. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.